Welcome to the bold analysis. I want us to start this podcast by a video clip back in 2012, where a gentleman made a statement that you cannot run the economy through propaganda. And that really applies to our situation now, because we seem to be doing a lot of propaganda, and there is a big gap between what we are saying and what exactly we are doing. A plan on how edible oil was going to reduce the cost of cooking oil has been reduced to profiling journalists and trying to find out who is supporting Kenya Kwanza and who is supporting Azimio la Umoja. And we've all agreed that we don't want to be told about which story, who is supporting Kenya Kwanza, who is supporting Azimio la Umoja. What the people of Kenya want to know is, did we lose money? Now, we cannot run the economy by propaganda, is what this gentleman said.
As the saying goes, when in doubt, observe the exchange rate. The lesson from history for governments is that you cannot manage the economy with propaganda. In fact, you can engage in all the propaganda you want, but if the fundamentals are weak, the exchange rate will expose you.
It is very absurd that this administration has invested heavily and have highly funded and over-resourced communication structures, but they have resorted to public propaganda to hoodwink the public. Last week, at the time the country was debating the finance bill, and I remember a journalist saying that what we are simply dealing with is not the thing, something is cooking in the background. Immediately, when we were talking about finance bill, Ruto Insider has leaked details of a 213 billions borrowed from the local banks, and there is a lot of suspicion in that borrowing. The passing finance bill last week, and probably it was actually borrowed on Friday last week. And Raila Odinga has come out with that dossier. Now, so there is one thing I want to tell you, that the magnitude of it, if you see a statement coming from Raila, that will tell you the magnitude and the high profile that was highly kept secret and no one else would actually say about it. I will not borrow to pay recurrent. I will not borrow to pay salaries. Has borrowed 213 within a day, a single day, and now the Azimio team are asking some questions why this borrowing is a challenge. By the way, I'll tell you that borrowing is not a problem. I'll tell you normally the problem in this. Now let's get to this facility. Now this loan facility was just taken a week to the end of the financial year. So Raila Odinga team and the Azimio team are asking, what is it going to be used for within that time? Where does it fall? It's one of the reasons why it's been flagged. Number two, the facility has been taken at the local banks at an interest rate of 15.84%. That's nearly 16%. And the economic analysts are actually seeing that as a very dangerous move, because it is going to affect the loan facilities in the private banks and the small businesses might have to pay loan at 24%. So what that will mean is that many people will shy from taking loans. And if people are not taking loans, then it means that the banks, because that's one of the products of the banks are going to be affected. And even the economy is going to stagnate, because the more people borrow, the more they tend to invest. Now, which projects are being borrowed, are being funded? I'll answer that question here. I want to answer that. I want to ask that question lastly. Before that, I want us to look at this now. According to PFM Act, we are supposed to borrow close to 450,000 and so thereabout. We've borrowed half of that amount 1 week to the end of this financial year. That is not even the problem. What I'm going to tell you next is where the problem is. According to our PFM Act, the financial bill, there are two appropriation bills. The one is appropriation development, then there is appropriation bill recurrent. I want to tell you this. Appropriation bill recurrent is money that is especially for the recurrent expenditure. Then appropriation bill development is for the development. Now, this is what the PFM Act says. Our debts are anchored on development expenditure. What does it mean? That's what the president says, that we are not supposed to borrow to pay loans. And he said he's not going to borrow to pay loans. He's going to borrow to pay for development. Now, what the whole idea here is that debts are taken for funding developments. Within this one, if we are borrowing, let's try to imagine with the rush to take it. Let's assume it's for development. So budget that we have is for the next financial year. We're almost finishing. So we've not birthed any other idea that we are funding unless we have taken that money to pay pending bills. And pending bills is part of debts that are supposed to be served by the recurrent account. So this is the problem, ladies and gentlemen. That borrowing is very intentional. It is very intentional because the two probabilities. Number one, KRA is below the target. Remember, their target was at 2.1 trillion. So maybe 7 days to the end of it, KRA is still below the target. And if it is below the target, then it is below the target by a very huge margin. Their margin is not even close to the expectation. And to say the truth, I don't think the problem is the margin. The problem is that even that margin is compromised. Number two is that government is technically broke. Why? This money might have gotten to other people's ideas. We have a lot of wheel dealers around. Now, there is another probability that also people are talking about. The whole country, and what as we are asking is not on what exactly it is, but just an explanation. If the loan facility was used to pay pending bills, then it should have a ripple effect in the economy. And most probably, it can go to that. And even pending bills, there are bills that if we pay, they don't have the ripple effect. For example, a tender that was awarded and something that happened 4 years ago, and you pay that contractor, and because that contractor is connected to politician XYZ, you give money to that politician, and that politician does not give it to the economy. Unless if you go and pay a contractor who is still in the business of road construction, who will still have an effect of paying others, and that money gets to the economy. So there will be the feel-good effect. But if that money was to be used to pay pending bills, then that would have been made public. But remember, it was a highly kept secret. I want to repeat. The whole thing about governance, we cannot depend on propaganda to hoodwink the public. Kenyans just need information. Information is power. And I think the questions that are being raised there, someone should not tell you about, Raila should not ask these questions. So who is supposed to ask those questions? Let me say this. Why is it out? Why do you think that loan is out? The facility, that dossier is out because the loan could have been flagged internally within government. I want to believe the person that gave the Azimio Umoja, or rather Raila Odinga, that information must be an insider. In fact, the custodian of that facility must be an insider. So technically, it is either the two people here. It is either the lender or the borrower. It is either internally within government, people flagged it, or the banks that gave the loan are the ones that are telling Raila Odinga about it. And why? Because it is fishy. If it is not fishy, then no one can even think about sharing it, because that's not the first loan that government takes. Loans, of course. They take loan facilities. But this is coming out because it is already flagged. There are some red flags around it. Number two, the facility was kept it was kept a big secret, and probably some relevant stakeholders, state officials, were not involved. They're not involved and they don't know what's happening. So it's a case of deal gone wrong. So when Raila Odinga acts as the whistleblower and raises this question, then government will be pushed in a corner to come and give a statement, or rather an account of it. Truth be told, I have looked at the replies in Raila Odinga. I think Raila Odinga did not even share it in his social media pages. It was shared by the Azimio TV crew. And I've seen some good Kenyans milling in the reply section saying that Raila Odinga should not talk about the loan facility now because Uhuru borrowed and he did not raise the questions. Now, that is a political narrative that is an escapist narrative. If that is the situation, then William Ruto by then was kind of was like the opposition leader. What did he do? Did he even raise those questions? He did not. And is it about the question that has been raised or about who is raising it? Now, fine. I know it's true that Raila never raised the borrowing questions, probably when they were the Uhuru Kenyatta. Now, would it be made better? Do you think UDA would not owe Kenyans an explanation if the same report would have come from some media house? They're just the different aspects of it. The other day, the two scandals, edible oil and the NHIF, came from Nation. Now, this one has come from the opposition. Will it make a difference, even if that was supposed to be made by some Andrew Kibe in the US? Will it make a difference? So I think the whole thing is about accountability of the facility. Because Kenyans seems to bury their heads in the sand. That, everything is fine. And you try to treat everything politics. But in the wake of time, nisisi naturamba. On this one, it's a very clear question. What exactly is going on? What was that money used? Where is that? What is exactly the rationale behind it? Did it follow the law? That is the explanation needed. Not on how opposition is asking those questions because they never won. It's true they are not in government. But instead of profiling, we don't want to see another statement from another CS, another person attacking the opposition simply because of that. Instead of the attacks, just give us the explanation. I think that's what Kenyans want to know. And that's my take. Thank you very much. We are still reaching out towards the Saturday, the Sunday children's home visit in Nemaland. Kindly, you can support us with the dry food, and I've pinned different members of my team, the Bold and the Bold Charity Network. Those within Nairobi and CBD, you can contact Kawira. Those within Ngong Road, you can contact Brenda, our diaspora, and also those who want to contribute in terms of monetary terms. We will still welcome. I've also put my number there, and I believe this will be a great success. So thank you guys, and let's meet in the next.